The story of the Washington quarter dollar of 1988 begins long before the year itself, because every modern coin carries with it the layers of history tradition, artistic decisions, and economic realities that shaped its creation. The Washington quarter first entered circulation in 1932 as a commemorative coin honoring the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. The design created by sculptor John Flanagan became an instant national symbol and, over the decades, the coin evolved through changes in metal composition, minting technology, and production levels. By the late 1980s, the Washington quarter had become a constant presence in American pockets, vending machines, cash registers, and coin collections. The year 1988 represents a chapter in the extended life of the series, a year in which the United States Mint continued to refine production quality while dealing with rising demand from a growing economy. To understand the 1988 quarter, one must first understand the environment of American coinage during the decade. The United States had shifted in 1965 from 90% silver to a clad composition of copper and nickel, due to rising silver prices and shortages that affected the ability of the mint to supply circulating coinage. By 1988, the clad plancher had become the established standard. The quarter, therefore, was struck on a copper core coated with a nickel layer, giving it the familiar silvery appearance that Americans had grown accustomed to for more than 2 decades. The mint at this time operated in 3 major locations for circulating coins: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Philadelphia and Denver produced most of the coins meant for everyday use, while San Francisco focused largely on proof coinage for collectors. In 1988, the Philadelphia Mint struck a large number of Washington quarters, carrying no mint mark as was customary for that facility. These coins were created using high-speed presses that could churn out hundreds of coins per minute, with each plancher being fed into the coining chamber, where the dies struck the obverse and reverse designs under immense pressure. The obverse continued to feature the classical profile of George Washington, which by this time had become one of the most recognized images in United States numismatics. The reverse carried the heraldic eagle, with outstretched wings clutching a bundle of arrows symbolizing readiness for defense, while an olive branch beneath represented the hope for peace. This combination of symbols was seen on countless coins from 1932 to 1998, and the 1988 quarter remained part of this long tradition. The Denver Mint produced its own vast supply of 1988 quarters identified by the D mint mark placed to the right of Washington's ponytail. Denver had become known for strong, sharp strikes and high-quality output during the 1980s as the mint continued to modernize its equipment and improve consistency in the coining process. Demand for coins in commerce was rising because the late 1980s saw increased consumer activity growth in the retail sector and more widespread use of coin-operated machines. All of these factors required the mint to maintain a steady flow of quarters to banks and businesses across the nation. The quarter was particularly important because it had become the backbone of vending machines, laundromats, arcades, toll booths, and parking meters, all of which relied heavily on this denomination. Meanwhile, the San Francisco Mint continued its role as the producer of proof coins. The 1988 S-proof Washington quarter was manufactured using polished planchers and specially prepared dies that were cleaned frequently to maintain mirror-like surfaces. Proof coins were struck at lower speed and with higher pressure to achieve sharper detail and contrasting finishes. The frosted design elements and reflective fields of the proof quarter made it a favorite among collectors who sought to preserve these coins in protective cases. Proof sets sold by the Mint that year included the penny nickel dime quarter and $50, all bearing the S Mint mark. These sets represented a significant part of the Mint's annual revenue through collector sales. The overall design of the Washington quarter in 1988 remained essentially unchanged from previous years, but subtle shifts in die-quality engraving details and minting standards created variations that collectors today study closely. Small changes in lettering thickness, spacing feather detail on the eagle or hair strands on Washington can sometimes help numismatists identify specific die varieties. The late 1980s were also a period in which errors and varieties gained interest because high-speed production occasionally resulted in misaligned dies, clipped planchets off center strikes, or die cracks. While most errors were caught and destroyed at the mint, some escaped into circulation, creating fascinating pieces that collectors now consider treasures of the 1988 quarter series. Coin collecting itself was becoming more popular during the 1980s, due in part to the influence of magazines, coin shows, and expanding hobby networks. Many people saved examples of new coins from each year and mint mark. As a result, the 1988 quarter is relatively accessible today in circulated and uncirculated condition. Yet pristine, high-grade examples, especially from rolls stored carefully since their release, can command premiums, because not all quarters survive the decades without wear or contact marks. The surfaces of clad quarters are particularly prone to scratches and dulling, which makes perfect mint state coins somewhat harder to find than their large mintages might suggest. The economy of 1988 influenced coin production in several ways. Inflation had changed how Americans spent money, and quarters were increasingly needed for everyday transactions. The United States Mint therefore targeted efficient production schedules and improved quality control processes. Advances in metallurgy and planchet preparation ensured more consistent metal surfaces and weights. The presses used in Philadelphia and Denver were powerful and precise, enabling the mint to produce billions of coins annually, across all denominations. The quarter remained one of the heaviest circulating coins and thus required careful calibration of striking pressure to preserve the detail of Washington's portrait and the eagle design. The year 1988 falls near the end of the long era of the original Flanagan reverse because just a decade later in 1999, the Mint would launch the historic 50 state quarters program, replacing the eagle with rotating state designs. This makes the 1988 quarter part of the final chapter of the classic design era. It represents the stability of American coinage before the major transformations that defined the turn of the century. For this reason, many collectors view quarters of the late 1980s as historically meaningful pieces bridging the old and the new in United States numismatics. In daily life, the 1988 quarter played a crucial role in vending culture, which was booming with soda machines, snack dispensers, newspaper boxes, parking meters, and arcade games requiring multiple quarters for operation. Children during that era often carried quarters for video games, while adults used them for transit systems and everyday purchases. The presence of the 1988 quarter in millions of transactions means that these small coins represent a snapshot of American society at the time, reflecting purchasing habits, prices, and lifestyles. Each coin circulated through countless hands, witnessing the everyday life of people across the nation.